Yeah, actually, I had to hit go live on the actual YouTube thing, so all of that intro is not there. So
So now we're on.
Yeah, now we're live. Go live on the actual YouTube thing. So all right, so now we're live. Okay. Go live on the. Stop it! Stop it! Oh my goodness! All right. So I apologize in advance for any technical difficulties. This is the first episode of the Studio Sensei podcast. And because of that, some of these things we'll be figuring out as we go. And the rest, we're just pros. And it looks like we know what we're doing. So I basically made this whole, introduction to nobody. Well, not nobody. Alex is here.
Very sweet.
Present company not included. She's definitely not nobody. But I was saying how this podcast is it's the Studio Sensei podcast, which is related to my creative wellness platform, Studio Sensei, where I help people and train them in creative wellness practices and in intuitive literacy. And I've been told for many years you should start a podcast. You should start a podcast. I mean, I think most people in the population have heard that phrase. It's the new, we should start a band. And I wasn't really interested until now, when the certain intersection of ideas that I wanted to accomplish later down the line all had an overlap at the right time. And on this podcast, what we'll always be doing is discussing the philosophy and the behaviors of success and wellness with creative people. And that's something that's always been important to me, because I think it's important when we travel to make maps of where we've been, because it helps other people as well as us when we forget. And I thought there was no one more more fitting for the first episode of this podcast than my really good friend and associate here. She's somebody that I probably more so than ever had like a deeper friction with. I mean, we lived together for 17 years plus, and we're in a band together still in a band together for over probably close to 20 years. In a few music groups, in fact. And when I talk about the friction, I say it in a loving way, because friction creates smoothness. And she's been integral in my spiritual and personal upbringing, as well as in a musical way. We created a kind of like atmosphere in which we all helped each other out in a closed environment for many years. And I'm really happy to have her on the show. Alexandra Love, everyone.
Hi. Wait, now you're leaving?
Yeah, it's your podcast now. Hi, hot potato. No, I just wanted to close that because I didn't want to have one of those moments where my daughter walks in naked or something, which still can happen. So, Alexandra is the singer of Soliloquist of Sound, the main group that I am a part of. We, like I said, we lived together for 17 years, and we also created a group called Chakra Khan, and I work on music with her in her group, Beautiful Chorus, which is just an incredible group of women that she founded. And can you tell us a little bit about Beautiful Chorus?
Yeah. Beautiful Chorus is a group that I put together back in like late 2011. And we make high frequency love music. We help people meditate and chill out and create new mantras for themselves, sort of bringing that sort of meditative flow into everyday life.
Yes.
Just in a very real, grounded, but spiritual way.
Which is awesome because it's definitely something we absolutely need. And I don't use the word need often, but I can safely say that we need that in this time, as well as, you know, always. I mean, this time especially, but it's always, we always need that. And it's awesome because you actually had you're reaching far with that. I saw Lizzo playing your music before a show on an Instagram story.
Yeah.
I had a session with a client yesterday, and he was like, you know, I signed up for your one-on-one coaching, and I never really heard of you, but I realized you worked with Beautiful Chorus, and I was like, oh, that's yeah. I've met a couple people who just are like, yeah, you work with Beautiful Chorus, right? And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's super cool.
I guess I haven't seen you in a few days or in a week or so, or we're all taking part in the social distancing, or actually, I guess, physical distancing, because I mean, here we're being social, but how are you doing?
Good. I mean, you know me, like I love just being at home anyway.
Right.
And exploring this space. I tend to be more of like a mental explorer than a physical go out explorer type of person. So
right.
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
We're safe, we're healthy, we're staying inside, we're, you know, going out into the backyard. And
yeah, and it's been great weather here in Orlando to be able to do that right now.
Thankfully. How are you doing?
Doing well. You know, like just like you, this is a space that I'm pretty familiar with.
Yeah.
I was on tour when all of this hit, so the tour got canceled, and then I came home, which I was happy to be with the family. But usually when I'm not on tour, this is kind of the usual workflow anyway.
Yeah, I think that's kind of common for a lot of musicians who are like us. Yeah.
The thing that's different though is it's different energetically and perception wise, right?
So much. I mean, it's mostly different, but there is
of course
this comforting for me similarity of like home at the studio. Cool. Like I can do this, but it is mostly different. We went for a bike ride yesterday, and when we got back, we were talking about how every single person we passed had an awareness about them that I've never experienced from just passing people. It's like everyone knows what's going on. Everyone is aware of it. Everyone is being conscientious. And there's that aspect to it, but there's also just the foundational awareness, like present moment. What am I doing right now in this moment? Awareness people had yesterday, which was actually really beautiful.
I've been finding my interactions with people from a distance, obviously, like me being out on the porch playing in the yard with my girls, my wife, my daughter, saying hi to people. Like it just feels a lot more full of care and mindfulness. And
it's people mean it.
I feel like a buzzing.
Yeah.
And I can only equate that to the fact that we are, as the whole world is on the same page right now. And that's never happened like this in my lifetime, let alone ever. It has never happened like this ever.
Like this, yeah. Because even when things like this have occurred, there hasn't been this free flow of information.
Oh my goodness.
Before, so yeah, it's new.
Now I have to say, like, obviously, to people who are sick, to people who are worried, and to people who have loved ones or they themselves are like health-wise affected by what's going on, I'm absolutely, sensitive to that. But on the other side of this, I can't help but feel like how necessary all of this is, both for the protecting of people not going through that, and just what people are going to find in this space.
how necessary distancing is? You mean people staying home?
Definitely distancing, but what we all might find by us all doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already one to think that things are necessary if they're happening.
We know that also because we've been trying to encourage and inspire people to do this sort of introspection that's kind of being forced onto everybody now. We've been trying musically and as people in our lives to get people to do that before, for years, for decades.
Right.
So there is that element
it's
to it.
definitely something that when you find it yourself, you want to encourage other people to find it as well.
It's so special. It really is.
Yeah. I think it's like a great time of like resetting and recharging and really realigning with what matters most to people. Yeah, and I think that is super, super important. Like, when has the world ever been, I'll use your term, forced chill is a term that I love that you use. Like,
always.
Alex always would talk about when a hurricane would come through Florida and the power would go out or something like that. She'd be like, well, forced chill. And I was like, yeah, which was an important term for me because for many years, like I wouldn't give myself permission to chill. And I learned a lot about that from you. So yeah, to be in this sort of forced chill on a worldwide scale is incredible, and it's exciting to see what's going to happen, and very interesting and unprecedented, and super interesting to see to think about what the other side of this looks like, and how people may or may not carry the mindfulness that they find in this space forward. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this as well, because I think it's a crucial time to take advantage of what we're being shown.
Yeah.
And I think that success and wellness are two terms that, to me, like when I look at those words on a paper or something, or when I just even think about those words, I kind of get excited, kind of like the word practice. Like when I see that, it has like awesome connotation with me, and it makes me feel really awesome. Success and wellness to me is something that is personal and that really resonates with all that I'd want. It's kind of like my own personal mantra: success and wellness.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of normalizing what that really means, and not just the half definitions that we've come to know them to be. So one of the things that I'd like to do moving forward with all the guests that I have on here is ask almost the same questions amongst all of the guests. So that I could, just starting personally, see how they all line up. Because, we're scientists, you and I, we like to have these thought experiments and these kind of social experiments to just, if only to prove how alike we are, and how much we do align in ways that we don't often speak about.
Yeah.
So here, to start this off, I wanted to say first why I think you're successful. To me, every guest.
Great.
Yeah. Don't like brace for being offended.
I'm going to tell you really quick.
You know what's great about you? You just don't care. Like how much
an eloquent way to tell you about yourself. So just
yeah. Hey woman, let me explain to you why you're special.
It's like we can't escape it.
No, I'm leaning right into it. I will mansplain the world. I think it's funny. Like, you know what's great? You just don't care how you look.
Here's what
how much of an asshole you come off as. I love it. It's really inspiring.
So brash.
You chew real loud,
God.
and that it's just indicative of confidence. No, none of those things are true. But I I made it like my own personal rule set for my internal way of how I operate this podcast to only have people on here that I think are successful, but my idea of success or their idea of success, even more accurately. I just to tell a quick little story. I went to a big company, and I was visiting somebody there, and it's a huge company, and on a company wide level, they had all of their employees go into the main space, this big auditorium that they have, and they had like a 4 or 5 hour empathy training course, like that was hosted by other people, and the purpose of it was to get them familiar with their kind of the part of their target market that was low income, right? And they had story packets, and like you all role played and you broke off into groups. And I was looking around like, this is incredible. This is so cool, that there's like this much organization and this much effort being put towards empathy training. But I also thought at the same time, like, this is super incomplete though. Like, where's the empathy training for rich people? Where's the empathy training for people who you think are better off? Not just the ones that you would deem having less than. And it got me thinking about certain things, because I think training like that would just be useful worldwide, because it would just show people how there are certain things that there's just no boundary with, and that people that you even think are really on the level or really crushing it, not necessarily much different from you. And the things that are different are within grasp. So when I think of successfulness, I think of if that person thinks they're successful, or what's like a bespoke version of success for each person. And when I thought of you, some of the things that came to mind why I think you're successful is, as long as I've known you, I've never met anybody else like you that is so well rooted in what they know. You do a lot of work to figure out how you feel, and what you feel translates to, like what it means when you feel a particular thing.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen many other people do that amount of work. But when you do the work, you operate in the world as if that thing that you felt is 100% accurate and true.
Yeah.
And
you have to.
I mean, you have to.
Yeah.
But you say you have to, but it's not necessarily something that many people do. It's actually.
I say I have to because I found out what happens if I don't at
Right.
a very young age, looking different, being in a place where no one looked like me, and on many different levels. I started out taking cues from what other people were saying, and then found out really, really quickly that, like, if I paid attention, I found out that if I gave more attention to what other people were saying about me than to what I felt about myself, that it would lead me, there'd be like confusion, indecision, and whatever. But then if I really, really paid them a lot of mind, like, my life would be chaos. But
Right.
if I take it into my own hands, then I'm responsible for it. I'm aware of what's happening. I have inventory of all the, the possibilities of things and my choices therein. So it just feels more comfortable. It's an uncomfortable process to go through, because it requires the unlearning of taking cues from other people, which we're all taught to do. So it's an uncomfortable bridge at first, and then it's just like, oh, this is the only way that makes sense anymore, you know?
Right. Which,
And
when I hear you say that, it's like, of course that's what you do.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But also, like you said,
idea.
Say again.
It's not a big deal. It's not a big idea. It's just like the way the kids operate. It's the way we operate when we first get here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the main things that helped me also understand that, like, that's what I want to be doing. Kids go for what they want. They don't give up easily. They don't sit in failure. They go for what they want. And if they get knocked down, they get up and they keep going for it, or they think about something else.
Exactly.
It makes sense to me.
It does make sense. And when you say it, it absolutely makes sense. But, and I think it makes sense to anyone that would hear that. But also, what makes sense isn't necessarily what we practice. And I think that's where it becomes noteworthy for me, is the fact that in the face of a very loud counter practice, you're still doing the thing that makes the most sense.
Yeah, well, it took a long time to get that momentum up to the point where now I don't really sway from it, but it takes practice.
Do you think that there was a particular time that started you off? Like, obviously we like you said, we start off from a place of being there intuitively, but then we learn the practices of moving away from that.
Mm-hmm.
So we develop the skill of being away from that, right?
Yeah, the skill of people pleasing, of worrying about what other people think. Yeah,
absolutely. And
even though nobody else knows what they want, so like, I'm going to take cues from you. You don't even know what you want for your own life. Like,
yeah, it's like we're being used as archetypes to figure it out for them.
Yeah.
Was there a particular time for you when that became a crucial decision to make to move away from that practice of people pleasing and all these other things?
It's over the course of years, and it's almost with every experience that I have, that either the experiences that I was having showed me that I needed to take more into my own hands concerning my own life, or now that I'm glad that I do. So it's a constant thing, but it definitely started when I was 10, when I lost my hair. You start, if you're 10 years old and you don't look like anybody else, and you don't know what's happening to you, and you're reaching for like solutions. The first solutions you reach for are people who want to help you, people on the outside. And it's always good and intended, or it was for me anyway, people wanting to help. But then it becomes sort of being dependent, which then, of course, throughout life just doesn't work.
Right.
I've always been really logical. Also, I've never been very like overly emotional, or even necessarily just emotional about things. So for me, even from that young age, it just made, like, what made sense is what I always tried to do.
Have you ever traced an origin of your logical self, like where that logicalness came from?
I haven't, but I would think that one element that inspired me for sure is being around a lot of overly emotional people. My parents are not overly emotional. They're very rational decision making, calm, right, cool, grounded people. But there were like friends that I had, and people in school and relatives and stuff that would just kind of be overly effusive, and it would always, and then I'd see them making choices based on those emotions, and it not going well. So I was like, well, I've always kind of felt like life has an equation to it, and I don't know where that thought came from. It's just something I've always thought since as far back as I can remember, like 4 and 5 years old. Like there's a thing here. Like there's a thing that if I can figure it out, I can live the life I want to be living. And when I saw people being overly emotional and making choices from that place and not being successful in what they wanted based on what they wanted, that part of my brain was like, okay, that doesn't work. So don't do that. And then of course I proved it to myself, because, I was a teenager once, and as a teenager, sometimes you make emotional choices and it usually it doesn't pan out the way you're expecting it to. So it's a large combination of things. Honestly, it's just every single experience sort of. I notice patterns really easily, or patterns stand out to me also. So in every experience, every single thing that I've experienced in my entire life has pointed to the truth that when I know how I feel and I can figure out what it means for me and then make decisions confidently from that choice or confidently over time, it just works out and it's more fun.
Right. Which is
Yeah.
crucial.
Yeah.
And I think
Point.
you bring something up that's interesting to me, because a lot of the people I talk to that I know are in this similar space and confident in this space, had great early examples of both things, right?
Yeah.
Of like you're saying, you grew up, first and foremost, obviously your parents are going to set the tone for what one style looks like, but then you also had these contrasting styles at your disposal and in your perspective, that you got to see one versus the other and what one brings you versus what the other one brings you.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I think that just you talking about that makes me realize that that's a constant among people. It's not a monolithic, isolated approach,
Right.
which brings me to one of the things that that I use from you all the time. I amend it with additional language, but one thing that you always say that I quote more than anything from you is that it's always both.
Yeah.
Can you explain it's always both?
Yeah, absolutely. I live in this way, so I'm just going to talk about it like it's the truth. Everything that we think about has two sides, at least. Okay, so we'll say two sides just for the sake of the conversation. But let's say one thing is I'm an artist and I think I need to be creating more. Like, okay, cool, great. You're an artist. You could probably stand to create more. That's great. I'm an artist. I need to relax and take time for myself. Great. That's true too. Both things are true. And you have to sort of, there's like this pendulum swing or like this pattern to life where if you live it intuitively, you'll move through both of those things seamlessly and find the flow. And then like your life becomes, a symphony of those kinds of choices. Whereas what I think most people might get stuck doing is making one choice and consciously rejecting the other truth, and then trying to adhere to this so strongly that they miss the parts of this other side that could actually be a benefit to them. And then, a bird that flies with one wing probably can't actually fly, but flies in a circle. You can't.
At best.
Wait, there's a better analogy. You paddle with one oar and you go in a circle. So I've always just been aware of the fact that like multiple things are true in every situation. And it just matters. What matters most is my focus. What am I thinking about? How do I feel? Where's my attention? Where's my confidence? Am I excited about this? Am I scared about this? Am I thinking this thing and believing it out of fear? Can I change that to think about its opposite and be excited about it? Just, it's that equation life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I constantly say is it's always at least both, right? It's always at least both.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're experiencing it, it's there for a reason. And it's not necessarily in your best interest to like just focus on the positive of the thing, but take all into consideration and move with what's most productive. Right.
What do you think the reason is? You said it's there for a reason. What do you think that is?
I mean, it really could be so many different reasons for different contexts, but let's just speak as general and as dynamically as possible about, there's a positive thing and there's a negative thing, and they both exist and they're both facing you at the same time.
Yeah.
I think you intuitively have a reaction to both.
Mm.
And at the very core, I think that your reaction to both helps to triangulate what you want. Right.
If you need that, if you need it, some people need it. Some people, after building momentum in a positive direction, don't even have to consider the negative, and it doesn't really come into play
Right.
for
Right.
them in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that kind of practice evolves in different ways too. For me, the way that evolved is I don't really necessarily think of it as negative. It's just like,
right.
It's just there.
About it.
Yeah. Right. Right. And it does just become, this is a factor and this is a factor.
Yeah.
What do you want?
I think one of the hiccups that people experience is that they think that emotions mean the truth about a thing. And it's like, we have already been, all of us in our own lives have been shown that, like, just because I feel bad about something doesn't mean that thing is bad. Because I've for sure had negative feelings about things that are fine. Like I didn't have to go there with it. We tend to think, like, if I feel negatively about something, it means that thing is bad. And if I feel positively about it, it means that thing is good. But what I tend to believe more so is that if I feel negatively about it, it's because of, it's like an indication of where my focus is. It doesn't define the thing I'm looking at. It's more about me than the thing.
Right.
So I think that the reason that things present themselves, positive or negative, is because of our focus and because of our momentum, right? So if you live like a consistently negative life, you're more likely to see things as negative, receive things, perceive things, and experience things as negative. But if we can shift our focus a little bit or cross that uncomfortable bridge for a little bit and get into the momentum of the other side of it, the other thing that is also true, then I think there's immense power in that. And what's crazy is that societally, we are sort of shunned or shamed away from doing that in instances where I've seen people saying, look at all this beautiful stuff that's happening in the world now, and it is as a result of this experience that we're all going through. These things are still really beautiful that are happening. There are beautiful things that are happening. And what I've seen so many people do is say, yeah, but don't forget about this. Don't be in denial about the negative. And it's like, listen, I'm just trying to focus for a minute to build up this good energy so that I can experience more of it. It's like we're almost taught to be ashamed of directing our focus to the positive for any extended period of time, when in actuality, that is part of the answer to the joy that all of us want to be experiencing.
It's such an interesting reaction. There's a myriad of interesting reactions to consciously focusing on what you want, right?
Yeah.
Versus bringing up what you don't want, right? And it's funny, people get angry,
Yeah, it's a real thing.
People get offended. They get, and then ultimately they're coming from a place of confusion. Like, how are you not doing this? This is the way you interact with these things. Like right now, I encounter a few people who are immensely worried by what's happening right now, which makes sense.
Yes,
right?
Yes, that makes sense.
But at the same time, I personally don't think that worry is as useful as vigilance or mindfulness. I love the simple phrase that worrying is like praying for what you don't want.
It is. It literally is.
Right. Yeah. So I always tell people, like, I always try to encourage people, like, I know you have a very real and true intuitive nudge to pay attention to these things that could potentially harm you, right? But just consider that maybe it's not in your best interest to react with worry to that nudge, and maybe care and mindfulness and vigilance instead. And people are like, I've experienced many different reactions to that, but it's almost like always like a fighting to like hold on to worry or the thing that they would not want. And I've seen the same people that worry like not have the personal space or internal space to even be careful about the thing that they're worried about. You know, it kind of keeps you from reacting appropriately to the situation.
It does.
And in
Well,
fact, like,
momentum to it. People have been practicing worrying
Yeah.
about little, like people are not even just, you know, all of us have worried about something at one point or another, for sure, more than we needed to. That's a guarantee.
Yes,
I think what some of the issue with that is that we haven't been really mindful of even the small things that we worry about. Like we've just been letting the energy of worry build up before this happened anyway. And so now it's like there's a feast for it. Like, oh, okay, here's the thing.
I've been training for this my whole life.
My whole life. And now not worrying feels like I'm lying to myself and feels like a denial and feels not worrying now feels negative, which is so intense, you know, for so many people. So it can even feel like if I let my worry down, that I'm not doing my job as a concerned and informed human being, because we've been taught that worrying about someone means that you care. Like, oh, I've been worried about you. I miss you. All of these like negative connotation sort of things. We've been taught that to do that means that we care, instead of that caring for ourselves means that we care about this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that care isn't worry. You know, it's
not worry.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. And there's so many counterintuitive reactions. And I say counterintuitive because it's the ones we learned, as opposed to the ones that we would, if we knew that we had a choice, would choose. Right. Because we definitely have a choice at all times, regardless of what our reflexes jump for. And, you know, I think a lot of people also are so afraid to be a sucker, you know, like, they don't want to be naive. And they think that you're naive.
Not worry about it and then have it sneak up on me and ruin everything.
Yeah. But that's like not even on the same scale. Like that doesn't necessarily
protection from the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. About it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hosting a workshop online next week. How to practice not worrying. I'm going to be doing a lot of things where it's just how to practice this. Things that people take for granted that aren't usually thought of as skill, but they are absolutely skills, you know? You know, if I could boil down what I think makes you successful is the fact that you're very in touch with your intuitive voice. And I think that for me is the blueprint for success. You know, not just, and that's what I talk about with intuitive literacy. It's not just the ability to hear or discern your intuitive voice from the rest of the noise going on, but really the ability to adhere to it and accurately interpret what it's saying into action. Right.
Yeah. I think one of the things that gets in the way, or even has gotten in the way for me before in interpreting and listening to, and as you said, adhering to my own intuitive voice, is worrying about what other people think of it. What will they say about it? How are my actions affecting other people? And it's all of those thoughts for me. It's all those thoughts about the outside world that have always sort of clouded that voice for me. And I'm thankful that over the years, I've just been able to just hone in on what my voice is saying, even if what my voice is saying to do is the opposite of what everyone else is suggesting or demanding or telling me I'm obligated to be doing, which can be scary because we are beings of connection. So we all want to be connected.
Absolutely.
And continuously connecting, obviously. And it can be a really scary choice to listen to your own feeling, you know, beyond what the world outside is telling you. But I think that is for sure one of the keys to true personal success.
Absolutely. And it's such a conundrum because we're so convinced that to like connect more deeply with ourselves would mean to disconnect more from others.
Yeah. And it does, but also it doesn't.
But I think more so you're disconnecting from practices that keep you disconnected from others, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's
For
like
sure. We've been taught that connecting with others means catering to them or doing
yes.
what they want. And yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It does take some moments in practice of disconnection or detachment. I think detachment's probably a better thing because it's not like you're not connected anymore, but it's that you're not, like
It's
tied.
about what it's about what you're tied to, you know?
Yeah.
And it takes some bravery in the world where you're convinced that you're going to trust fall into nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And of course so many of us have been taught that like we can't trust ourselves. Like don't trust your own instincts or yourself. Listen to this, authoritative figure in any sort of respect. It's an interesting setup, but the answers are always there and they're actually so simple. It just really takes practice and it can be about anything. Like you can literally pick something up and ask yourself how you feel about it. It could be a banana. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be, big life decisions that we make these huge strides on and like, I'm going to be different by tomorrow. Like just start very, very, very present moment, slow everything way down, which everyone is kind of being forced to do now anyway. Slow everything way down and take it piece by piece and let the little things matter and listen to how you feel about the little things and the big things. But if you can't figure out the big things, just pay attention to the little things and it'll still work.
Right. Right. What do you think some of these are kind of like fantastical questions, like simplifying things to things that maybe not will be that simple. But what do you think is the one thing that is at the root of all of what we would deem our problems to be?
Just allowing our own joy.
Allowing our own joy.
Disallowing.
Disallowing our own joy. Right,
yeah.
right. I've told you why I think you're successful. Why do you think you're successful? How do you define that?
Well, success for me is just how I feel about myself. So I'm not even looking at like the things that are going well for me out in the world, more so.
I would agree.
Just like how I feel about myself first, and then how I feel about other people and other things second, because that does matter to me. I do want to have good feelings about, the people I love and the world at large.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, what feels like success to me, just in my own mind and my own personal experience, is that I'm happy with my thoughts about myself and I'm happy with my thoughts about other people. And it's getting better and better all the time. And it's a continual process.
Beautiful. What are some things that you struggle with more than others?
Unicorns.
Yeah. Well, they're a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Other than that, things that I struggle with. People that I care about suffering. Struggle with that a lot. Anybody, family, friends, or honestly, people online that maybe I've never met, but we've, been Facebook friends for a while, and then, a step outside of the circle from that is just people in the world suffering. Like people suffering is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely feel that. What do you do with that?
I do my best to focus on the well-being that they do have, that is still in existence, even through their suffering. There is immense well-being within them, surrounding them, in the world in general. So I do my best to focus on that. Or if it's like a real moment where I'm really having trouble with it, I just distract myself with something that I love. Which I think, people are like, that's denial, that's a distraction. Yeah, it is. I'm fully accepting the fact that there is well-being and there is suffering, and I'm going to, for the sake of the conversation, deny the hell out of this right now and focus on kittens. Like this is what my brain and heart and spirit and body need right now, is to just think about things that I love. And then if I want to approach the subject of them suffering from a higher frequency within myself, then I'm better prepared to help anyway.
Absolutely. It's kind of like the worry thing. You could worry, But then like this situation, it weakens your immune system. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But if you focus on things other than worry, you know, you might be in a better place to properly and better react to the situation going on.
Yeah, yeah, and that can be hard for people because we're not taught how to do that. But it's literally like, I'm worried about the world. What can I do to help myself feel better? What's the opposite of worry? Confidence, right? Enthusiasm, clear focus, certainty, knowing, wisdom, insight. What is something that I have that feeling about? And it doesn't have to be the same topic that you've been worrying about. You can be like, I'm worried about the world. What am I confident about? I'm confident that, I can sew a straight line. Great.
Right.
Go do that. Focus on that for a while. Get that energy of confidence, insight, and wisdom going. And then once you build that momentum, you're in a better place to even think about the state of the world. The two subjects don't have to be connected or related at all. It's really about going from one feeling that you may not be enjoying to, its opposite about any subject.
I completely agree. And that's one of the things that's always been interesting to me, because our formative year, well, so many years are, all years are formative, aren't they? But so many of those formative years were spent living together and building together, arguing with each other, communicating with each other, and just really what we did is we created our own little ideal living space.
Yeah.
Communicated the way that we would think would be the best way to do so.
Yeah.
And always making choices and helping each other make choices that we knew were in our best interest at all times.
Yeah.
At all times. And I can't say how thankful I am to have lived damn near a lifetime of doing that with other people.
Yeah.
It's both been the most fruitful thing I've ever been a part of, and also so alienating in some ways to other things that are going on outside of that bubble that we created.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking about when you speak about these things, I'm like, yeah, duh, like that's what you do.
Yeah.
And I'm smiling, but I just know from experience that there's people that are like, in practice, it's alien to them, which makes me in practice.
Right. Well, so you called it an ideal situation, right? Like us living together, us creating this ideal living situation sends out the implication that like it was always easy and we're floating around the house, not actually.
No, absolutely not.
No, it was literally the hardest over a decade of my life that I
absolutely
ever experienced. And I think that's something that's really important to mention, but it's also really important to understand that when you start to really get to know who you are, like in a very focused, this is what I'm doing way, like everything falls apart. And you have to be willing to let it go. And you have to not be so egotistical about it that you start grasping at other things that aren't going to work. Like I think what could hold some people back is that fear of going through the period of time that for sure is probably going to suck. The thing that I've always kept in my mind is like, if I've like, say I love myself 20%, this is just say I love myself 20% and I don't love myself 80%. As I start loving myself more, I still have to be okay with 79, 78, 77% not loving myself, because as the positive grows, the negative is still very, very present. It is still both. But the point isn't like, it wasn't like, I'm going to switch from, 80-20 to like 100% loving myself by tomorrow. It's incremental, and there are decimals in there, and there are full weeks where you might plateau and you don't move at all in terms of, loving yourself or self-knowledge, or the things that we're all actually really going for. And I think that that is something that's so important to talk about, because people think that people like you and I just exist, or like we've always been dope, but like what we went through was game changing and not easy, and really, really easy sometimes, and really, really beautiful most of the time. And also some of the most heart wrenching experience, like just, you tear yourself open and you're just vulnerable all the
Yeah.
time.
And
So,
it's so funny because like when you talk about that, I think of times where I was like literally on the street convulsing.
well, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you know what I'm talking about. I was literally on the street like going, you know,
Yeah.
because of an argument we were having in LA, that and I think of other times where I would just fall out bawling because I was overwhelmed with stuff. And
you know what's so dope about that though is that when you did it, because most people would hold that in, even when you did that and you let it out, then it was able to just chill and refresh. And it's like you got you made it to a new level. Just crazy.
and then like literally health wise, I experienced some of the greatest pain I've ever experienced because I was literally running from some issues, and oh, hold on. Zoom. Hold on.
It happened. It happened. Hey, are other people out there still listening? Do I have the floor all to myself?
No, not anymore. I'm back. But there were, when you mention it, I see elements and little flashes of like, oh yeah, that sucked, that hurt, and this was, and we all had those experiences, in our own way and with each other. But on a whole, it's like my childhood. Like I can't look at it as anything but amazing, and that's kind of what I mean by saying like, we, when I look at negative, I can't see it as negative.
Well, you can't now because you've practiced yourself into a place of appreciating even the most difficult lessons. But then, so this is so perfect because this is literally what I mean by everything. Are you listening to me?
I'm totally listening. I'm trying to I'm trying to get something up here that relates to what we're talking about. I'm trying to produce a show by myself while having a conversation.
What I mean when I say everything is both is like everything starts out, everything is both, but the percentages and the fraction of it shifts and changes, right?
Yes.
So while you just said, yeah, that sucked, that time when I was bawling on the ground and like all of this, like, yes, that sucked. And I can't help but look at it like all positive because of what I understand now. So absolutely perfect, because absolutely everything is both, but the percentages shift, and they shift based on our focus, and our focus creates momentum, and the momentum changes the scales. So while back in that experience, you would have probably said in that moment that you were on the ground crying, you would have probably said 99% terrible, 1% good, or just 100% terrible, 0% good. It's still both, right? But at this point, because you allowed yourself to move through those times, and because you figured out how you learn from life and were able to bring that into every moment, and you appreciate, I know you as a person, you appreciate so much. You're so compassionate, you're so understanding, and you're so giving, and you've also learned to give to yourself. And then so like while that is still both, the percentage has shifted, and you shifted it through your focus, which created momentum. And now your vision of it is like, that was amazing. And now it's so amazing that like, that's the only way you talk about it, which is perfect. Because
and it doesn't just work in that skill doesn't just work in retrospect anymore.
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not even retrospect, because you're still in it. You're still
right. Right.
You're still in this. And now,
but like,
now it's happened that used to happen back then. It's not even retrospect. You now handle it from a different vantage point.
Absolutely. And it's just like, you know, I really believe that our minds are simulators, and we're just constantly, whatever space when we're in this space, we're simulating realities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we could go down a few rabbit holes about how some of these are as well, but you know, there is, I think, a shared reality, like we're in one right now. And I think that often people's simulations get disproven by the shared reality. And what's that?
What do you mean disproven by a shared reality?
So like, I could think of a lot of things that could go wrong if I go to the grocery store right now or something like that.
Yeah.
But more often than not, what actually happens is going to disprove most of what happened in my simulation. And I like to think of living life out here, not in here, as constantly disproving the simulations that I don't want to happen. You know what I mean? Like
negative simulations.
Right. And then that's how I define negative simulations, are just the situations I don't want. Right. So my point about bringing that up is like, by now, and actually since years ago, I just have so much proof that all things that come into my purview are necessary. You know, as I spoke of it being necessary before, that I just kind of default to that. So like, that's kind of why I don't see negative now so much, is because like, oh yeah, this is just not negative. It's just not what I want, or, you know, and it's here to show me like, okay, boom. And then I'm going to move this way.
I think you can look at it as necessary because you are speaking from a very spiritually privileged place. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people will worry about something being terrible and then go out of the world and be proven right. So I don't think that I don't ever consider experiences necessary. I don't think they're necessary. I don't think they happen for like a reason outside of ourselves. I literally think it's just how we focus most is what we will get. And you and I, as you know, have gotten to that sort of like spiritually privileged place just through focus and all of the chaos that we went through.
You're right.
You know what I mean? So you have this momentum, and it's so easy for you or me to say, I think everything's going to be fine. And then it is. Like, that is profound within itself. And I think it's important to still communicate with people about the fact that if it's not so much about, I'm going to think positive and then go out into the world and like, look, everything's fine. Because if your energy is not actually believing it, then you're still going to experience the things that you actually do believe. So in that way, a practice is essential, and it has to be consistent, and it has to be present moment, and it has to be your own. And, you know, you can find suggestions from like self-help books and spiritual texts and speaking with people who you consider to be a master in whatever area you're trying to grow in. But I think something that's really, really important to remember is that every single thought and feeling that we have is important and relevant and worth looking into and worth figuring out just for ourselves and worth pondering. And it is in these moments, aside from everything else happening, it is a beautiful opportunity now to have the time to be able to do that, because everything is so slowed down.
Yeah, I completely agree. Man,
what to be positively, have momentum toward the positive. We're very fortunate that we went through what we went through before now.
Absolutely. And I feel like I feel like my life has been nothing but experiences like that.
Yeah.
Even prior to us doing that with each other, you know, like I think of my childhood as the same way, you know. I effectively got my ass beat every day from my dad, not in a way that was like, you know, punishment or anything, but in an academic way, because he was teaching me martial arts and he would teach me in a very real way. But it was like, it was from a loving place. And I also, so it's such an interesting thing to be introduced to external physical pain from a loving place. And I think pain can be a great teacher. And I learned all the things that I think pain can teach without all the bad stuff, you know, like of like feeling like I wasn't loved, you know, like in fact,
a lot of people don't experience that.
I know. And when you say a spiritually privileged place, like that resonates a lot, you know, and
that's tough.
Yeah. It's super, it's crazy. But yeah,
it's very easy. It's both.
it's absolutely always at least both, right?
Yeah.
What do people get wrong about positivity?
That what it looks like is what it is.
Right.
Many people try to mimic the external way that they think positive people, like, oh, this person's positive, let me act like them. And it's like, if they're really positive, their positivity is coming from an inner generated core, very, very deep and cool place that is not about you.
Like they're mimicking the result and not the process of it, or the more subtle inner workings of it.
Yeah, some people sometimes speak about positivity as well as that going from a truly negative place to a truly positive is possible in a short amount of time, which it's not. Or it can be, but it'll be temporary.
Yes, absolutely. Super profound. What do you think is a good first step for people? Just the first step to practice, because like you said, this is something that takes time. And it takes consistent practice. Right. It's not something that came into effect. Like our current situation didn't come into effect like that. Right. It's been years and lifetimes in the making. Right. What is a good step that people can repeat? You know, in your opinion, to be on the way to a place where they'd prefer to be?
This is always a challenging question for me, not because of what the answer is, but because of how people take it, right? We tend to really bask in struggle. And we tend to think that if we go we want, we even have to struggle to get what we want, like hold on to the negative so much and like,
could you repeat that? You broke up a little bit. Can you repeat that last part?
Yeah, I think so. that we celebrate our suffering and that we tend to hold on, like we think that we have to suffer or struggle, whether we hold on to the things that aren't working or whether we go for what we want. We think struggle has to be a part of the whole process. So when I give this answer to what I think will help, most people are like, that's dumb, simple. I already got it. I already thought about that. I don't know how to do it. I'm not going to do it. It's worthless, whatever. The thing that I would say to do is every day for 10 minutes, just sit and breathe and do nothing else. That's it. Listen to music if you want to. Listen to the air conditioning. Look at a tree, whatever. But have some type of a consistent practice where you're not taking in external stimuli. You're more so just listening to, just sitting with yourself. With yourself. And aside from that, then I would say present moment awareness is key. Like there was, back when I lived in Chicago, I don't even know what inspired this, but I had this moment where I was like, I need to slow down. Too much is coming in. I'm doing too much. I'm handling too many things. So I got off the train and it was 3.5 block walk to my apartment at the time. I walked literally as slowly as I could the whole way home. Like I knew I just needed to slow down. And so I'm a Taurus. So I tend to like, when I do a thing, I do the thing. So I walked as slowly as I possibly physically could home. And it took me 3.5 hours to walk 3.5 blocks. And I saw the sun go down. I saw that whole process. I saw people in work clothes change into people in, going out to eat clothes. I saw like, it was such a beautiful and intense experience. And it really helped me understand present moment, because I was forcing myself to not just be going from A to Z. I forced myself from A to B to C, because we tend to skip we skip the awareness of so many steps.
Right.
Even if it's like putting my hands here to get out of this chair when we're done, or clicking this thing, like what's my hand doing? Where are my feet? Where's my body? How does it feel? What am I thinking? What sounds do I hear? Just awareness is key, because then it helped me tune into how I feel, and how I feel for me in my own life experience is the most important thing. I've given it priority.
I have this saying that Cliff and I always say, our good friend Cliff, that God is a skill.
Wow.
Yeah. God is a skill. And I also, something related to that, believe that every single moment you're spending time doing anything, you're practicing something.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true. That's true.
I
think God is a skill once we've learned the opposite, once we've learned how to disallow ourselves, then God is a skill. But kids coming in, like they're just chilling.
Yeah, totally.
That's skill. I think that's just the way it is.
Well, God is a skill has a couple meanings, and that's kind of why I just lay it out there. But one of the meanings meanings for me is that everything is a skill.
Okay.
Everything's a skill, which is why I also go to the, any time spent doing anything is practicing some skill, or something. One of the skills I think you are, as my dad always said that martial arts was something I practiced for the rest of my life, that I'd never master and hope to never use. Right.
Fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
Beautiful.
Huge. And but to that effect, I feel like something that you might be close to mastering more than, or at least like deep in the practice of more than most people that I know is just this sense of allowance, right? There's this story that I was preparing for sound set to do this new set that I had envisioned for sound set, which is this festival in Minneapolis, and it was a solo set. And I was practicing, and you walked by and you saw me kind of like struggling with it, and like I felt rushed.
Yeah.
I felt like I gotta get this done in time, and blah blah blah. And you were like, "Is everything all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to do this, that, the other thing, blah blah blah." And I remember you said, "Well, why don't you just not practice so much, or not prepare as much for this, and just kind of see what happens." And I was such in a place of that, head down, focused in that rushed energy of like, I gotta do this. Yeah. That kind of toxic old form of discipline, right? That I used to practice a lot. That I kind of took your advice, but I took your advice in a way that you completely did not intend it. And I went and took a break and went and like had some food, and I was sitting there and I was thinking like, yeah, she's right. And then I was like, wait a second. Once I gave myself space, I saw it as you intended it. The way that I took you saying, why don't you just not prepare for it and then see what happens? it went through my filter of toxic discipline that I was like really good at the time. And I took it as, well, if you don't practice, you're going to mess up when you go do this show. And then you'll learn to practice or to prepare. It's so ridiculous now, but I totally took it in a complete opposite way. Like you meant like, well, why don't you just prove to yourself that you really should get down here and get to work, mm-hmm. by failing at this, or by your worst fears of this happening. And I was just like, yeah, I'll do that. But then when I was like in an open, allowing space, eating where food, that comfort place, right? I was like, wait, she didn't mean that at all. And then I called you and I was like, wait, did you mean it like, to just allow yourself to go up there with what you currently know and you'll see that everything's awesome? And you were like, yeah, of course. What else did you think I meant? And I'm so thankful to have somebody that was practiced in such a place of allowance at the time that would say stuff like that to me. Like, yeah, this is great as is, I
think about that a lot too when I get into those places of like frantic, like the beliefs, the momentary beliefs of like, I have to do this, I have to get this done, I have to this, and I get to such a point and I'm like, wait a minute, what could I just let go of in this moment, even if it's just a part of one of these topics? Where do I have space? And something like meditating or sitting with myself for 10 minutes every day makes that space so much more accessible because I've practiced it. So now when I get into that place of like, I need to do this, I need to do this, it's almost automatic that my entire being is like, wait, take a breath. What do you need? What do you want? What can you let go of? Do you just need to chill right now? Do you need to do this in a different way? Do you just are you just dehydrated? Do you need to go outside?
Right.
Just, just like what is it? And yeah, that's really great. I'm so glad that you took my advice because of course you know what you're doing and of course it went perfectly.
It was killer. It was awesome. And it makes me think about the commodities that are very valuable in this space to people, and that's like time and space, both in the perceived definition of time and space and the as actual as you can quantify time and space to exist. So what's your relationship with time, for example?
My relationship with time has been changing a lot recently. Mm-hmm. So I'll just talk about it now. My relationship with time right now is that I've become much more present than even before. So even when I speak about, present moment awareness, it's always shifting and it's always sort of like in this flow. So for me now, time, because we're not going anywhere, we're not leaving, I've been finding a lot of comfort in making decisions in the moment I want to make a decision and not planning much of anything, which has actually been really nice. My current relationship with time is that it doesn't really exist. I'm not really, like some people are sharing things. It's like, today's Wednesday. And that's always really relieving for me because I'm not really thinking about, how we used to forget what day and time it was. In our home, in our bubble. And now it's like everyone's kind of on that tip a little bit.
It's such an interesting place to be where the whole world is on the same page. And I can't help but feel like I'm buzzing from that, and particularly in a space where we're all, looking at some of the same things in our own spaces. It's an incredible place to be in this time. And I think that these perspectives were always useful to me to practice with you. And I think that I just love the idea that we can talk about these things from this perspective. And because, there's a bunch of things that when concerning time,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we would, I would see you make decisions
Mm-hmm.
and then be like, now I'm doing this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you do that and you allow yourself to do it, where a lot of people would just be like, oh, I'm going to be flip flopping if I do that, or I'm going to be perceived as inconsistent. But it's
Yeah.
very consistent. You're absolutely always checking in with yourself
Yeah.
for what you want to do.
Yeah.
You
It can
know,
be challenging sometimes too, because, you know, you make a decision in confidence. And then if, you know, if I've still been thinking about what other people think more than not, then even after I make a decision in confidence, I might accidentally or whatever, check in with the rest of the world. And like, that's where the disconnect comes in. Like, if we can just focus on it, just focus on yourself, just focus on yourself. Give yourself even like 2 days of just focus on you. What do I want right now? How do I feel? Do I want to do art? What colors am I interested in? What do I want to do? Do I, you know, just like check in with yourself, focus on yourself. It's just my best advice. And it's only my best advice because it worked for me. And because for every single person I know who's done it, it works.
absolutely.
That's it. Just because it works. And because working means that it feels like working, life working, to me just means that like there's joy involved and it's fun and it feels great.
Absolutely.
That's my criteria.
Well, I'm going to have you on again once this, if you would be on it again, I'd love to have you on again.
We should talk every week. Why aren't we talking every week?
Because we're always doing so many other things.
That's very true.
You know?
But I would have time for this.
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you know what? Now that I'm looking at my calendar,
yeah.
Be busy.
You know, I love you with my whole heart and my whole being.
I love you too.
And we've always talked about doing this, you know.
Yeah.
We've had so many iterations of this in the kind of ethereal idea space between us.
Yeah.
And I'm psyched to just like be doing it sloppily, you know, at first, and just doing it. And that's why I called you to be the first, because we've talked about doing this for so long in some fashion or form or another.
We totally have. I'm super, super honored to be the first one. And this is really fun. And, you know, these types of conversations are like life to me. I love this stuff. This is what feels right. So I'm in. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you. And something else that I learned from you along the way is, you know, leave people wanting more, but more importantly, leave yourself wanting more.
Wait, what? I didn't say that.
Oh, that was somebody else.
Somebody else.
No, not maybe. That's what I took from it. But basically, you know, I'm verbose. Let's just say that. Let's be nice. I'm verbose. You know, I can keep going. But one thing that we learned together is that there's this point where things can be so great, you know, and we can keep going, and then we can like sometimes keep going to a point where we find ourselves like super tired or you know, like we had that conversation before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm boiling it down to a simple, you know, like well-known adage, but you know,
I think the adage you're looking for is like quit while you're ahead, more so than
quit while you're ahead, but also like in relation to appreciating and being and not like being look, the question about time, for example, you know, you kind of feel like rushed or like that you got to take advantage of it because you feel like in a place where if you don't, you'll miss out, you know, that type of thing. And I think that what I'm trying to get at is the fact that, like, man, I just want to keep talking and talking. We could probably talk all day, but at the same time, like, I am also recognizing the fact that that nudge is connected to my want to do this more, just like we talked, not just like try to make it all happen right now, but allow it to be a life thing instead of a now thing.
I'm in it. I'm with you for the long haul. So yeah, I'm in. That's great.
So with that in mind, I do want to thank you again for being a guest on the Studio Sensei podcast and all the other things. A special guest in my life and allowing me to be a guest in yours.
Yeah, the feeling's mutual for sure.
Do you have anything that you wanted to let the people know that you're involved in right now, that you have coming up, or any parting words on your part?
Yeah, well, the main thing is beautiful chorus. We help people meditate. We help people get in tune with the part of themselves. We just put out a song called Hymn of Healing, which is just a high frequency song, a hymn about healing. It's very simple. We take a very grounded approach to spirituality. So if you're looking for something to sort of start to, retrain or redirect or build more momentum in a positive direction, inside your own mind, you can find us at beautifulchorus.com or on any social media. And in terms of closing words, just that, you're enough. You're enough. You're good. You're a good person, whoever you are. You're a good person. You're enough. You deserve your attention. And once you get over the bridge of changing that percentage, from like maybe not necessarily thinking you're that great to thinking you're great, once you get through that transitory period, you will find joy unparalleled, I promise you. And every single thing you want is on the other side of that bridge. So go get it.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks again so much. I wanted to let the people know also that I'll be doing this from here on out, as long as it makes sense, and it definitely is something that makes sense to me in the near foreseeable and far foreseeable future. I am interested to know what you guys want from this, what you guys would like to hear, who you'd like to hear me talk to. And this is a different space for me, just to address the elephant in my room right now, which is the fact that I'm not so often the host as much as I'm like the guest. So that's a skill that I'm psyched to be practicing right now too. And I hope I did a good job by people's standards today. And I wanted to remind people that if you're interested in more things like this, you can always visit studiosensei.com. The workshops page of that site will always have the next free online workshops and things like the podcasts there for people to register for or attend. I'm trying right now to provide as much free and discounted things to the community and at large as is the world right now, because again, I feel like a certain urgency, a beautiful urgency to take advantage of this time and connect with as many people as possible on the things that I'd love to see more of in the world. And yeah, that's about it. Lots of love to all of you. If you're not currently on the Studio Sensei mailing list, please get on that, because next week we're announcing a bunch of cool things that we've put into action to help out in these times. And lots of love to you, Alex. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, I love you. I love you.
And have a good one.
You too. Peace.
Peace.